It was just past midnight when I woke up to the sound of a voice. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, one of those half-formed echoes that cling to your sleep when the night is too quiet. But then I heard it again, steady, low, calculated. It was coming from the other end of the hallway. I slipped my feet into my slippers and held my breath. The house was silent save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. My daughter's home was all sleek corners and polished surfaces, every sound amplified against the stillness. That made the whisper even sharper, a foreign disturbance in a place that was supposed to be safe. I edged closer, careful to avoid the one hallway board I knew creaked. The voice grew clearer. It was male, calm, but laced with something cold that made the hair on my arms stand up. My son-in-law, Daniel. I pressed my ear against the door of his study. His tone was stripped of the polite warmth he always displayed, the kind that could charm neighbors and clients alike. What I heard instead was his real voice, flat and merciless. "She's already losing track of days. The meds are working. By tomorrow, she'll be incoherent enough for the paperwork. Once she's inside, no one will question it." I froze. My pulse hammered so loudly I thought he might hear it through the door. For a second, I doubted myself. Was he talking about me or someone else? But then his words came again, clearer, crueler. "I'll have her committed. After that, all I need to do is deal with my wife, and the money will be ours. No one will suspect a thing." The air left my lungs. My knees weakened, and I pressed against the wall to keep from sliding to the floor. He was talking about me and my daughter, his wife. A silence followed, broken only by the faint murmur of the person he was speaking to. I couldn't make out the other voice, only Daniel's sharp response. "You'll get your share. Stop worrying." Then came a laugh. Low, bitter, stripped of humanity. It was the laugh of a man who had already planned everything down to the last detail. I stumbled back, careful not to make a sound, though inside I wanted to scream. My mind felt like it had been dunked into ice water, shocked awake. I wanted to run into my daughter's room, shake her, warn her. But then the detective part of me, the part that never truly retired, whispered in my head, "Not yet." If I accused him now, he'd turn it on me. He'd already been planting seeds of doubt for weeks, reminding everyone how forgetful I'd become since my health scare, telling my daughter I was confused, fragile, and hadn't I felt it too? That strange haze that settled over me every evening after his special tea. I had brushed it off as age, exhaustion. Now I saw it for what it was. Poison disguised as care. I slipped back to my room, my hands trembling as I shut the door. The house felt like a cage, its quiet hums and automated whispers now sinister. Every camera tucked in the corners, every motion sensor, every voice-activated screen. I no longer saw them as conveniences. They were eyes and ears that belonged to him, not me. I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to steady my breathing. My daughter Emily was asleep down the hall, lying beside the man who was planning her destruction. My heart ached with fear but also with rage. Rage at his deception, at his arrogance, at his belief that I was too weak to notice. For a few minutes I let myself feel the weight of it, the betrayal, the horror, the suffocating fear that tomorrow I might be dragged away, branded as unstable, and silenced forever. But then something inside me shifted. My hands stopped trembling. My mind, fogged for weeks, began to sharpen with an old familiar clarity. I had been a police detective for over 30 years. I had stared liars in the eye, uncovered hidden truths, and pieced together stories from scraps of evidence. That woman wasn't gone. She was still here, buried under the drugs he had been feeding me. And she was angry. I wasn't just a mother, or a potential victim. I was a witness. I was an investigator. And tonight I had stumbled onto the case of my life. The clock on my nightstand glowed 12:47 a.m. I had less than a day before his plan unfolded, less than a day to find proof, protect my daughter, and stop a man who believed he had already won. I lay back in bed, staring at the ceiling, the storm of thoughts finally hardening into resolve. Tomorrow Daniel thought he would erase me, but he didn't know me. He didn't know what I had been, what I still was. He would, and when he did it would already be too late. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. From the outside, my daughter's home looked like a sanctuary. People who drove past would see a flawless modern structure, sleek lines, towering windows, and manicured hedges that wrap the property in quiet prestige. It looked safe, secure, the kind of place that said this family has nothing to fear from the world outside. But once I knew the truth, I realized the house wasn't a home at all. It was a cage. Every room gleamed like a page from a design magazine. Floors polished so well they caught the light like mirrors. Furniture arranged with perfect symmetry, as though no one dared disturb it by truly living there. Even the air felt controlled, climate regulated, purified, too clean, like a hospital that had dressed itself in luxury. I'd once admired it. When I first moved in, I thought Daniel was being generous. After my heart scare, my daughter Emily insisted I shouldn't live alone. "Come stay with us, Mom," she had said, her hand warm over mine. "It'll just be for a while. Daniel and I can take care of everything." Her eyes had shone with love, and I had agreed. At first, it seemed like a blessing. A guest room overlooking the garden, a kitchen stocked with all my favorites, a daughter who wanted me close, and a son-in-law who greeted me each morning with a smile and a steaming cup of his special blend tea. But slowly things changed. The house began to feel less like shelter and more like surveillance, subtle at first. The blinds that opened by themselves each morning, as though deciding for me when I should wake. The voice-controlled lights that responded before I even reached a switch. The faint hum of security cameras tucked neatly into corners. Always present, always watching. Daniel loved to boast about the system. "This place is smarter than any of us," he'd laugh. "It knows what you need before you do." He meant it as a joke, but I didn't laugh, not anymore, because what I needed wasn't what the house provided. I needed freedom, privacy. I needed to feel like a person, not a patient, in an elegant ward. Daniel played his part well. He was attentive, too attentive. He reminded me to take pills I didn't remember agreeing to. He poured tea each evening, smiling as he watched me drink. He hovered, always close, always careful, too careful. And then there was Emily, my sweet Emily, my only child. I watched the brightness drain from her day by day. She was tired all the time. Forgetful, she'd laugh off her mistakes, misplacing her phone, repeating herself mid-conversation, as if they were quirks. Daniel would rest his hand on her shoulder and reassure her in that smooth, patronizing voice. "She's just under a lot of stress, aren't you, sweetheart?" But I could see it. The same fog that had begun to cloud my own mind was smothering her too. I tried to bring it up once. "Emily," I said quietly one afternoon, when Daniel had stepped out, "don't you feel strange, like your thoughts aren't always your own?" She looked at me with confusion, then pity. "Mom, you've been through a lot. Remember what Dr. Green said? Your memory might slip after the scare. Daniel's just trying to help us both." That's when it hit me. The story was already built. I wasn't just an aging woman recovering from illness. I was fragile, forgetful, prone to paranoia. And if I ever raised my voice against Daniel, if I ever accused him of anything, it would fit his script perfectly. The house wouldn't echo with my truth. It would echo with his version of it. And my daughter, drugged and weakened, wouldn't be able to see the difference. Every time I walked through the silent halls, I felt the walls closing in. It wasn't the expensive art or the sterile white walls that frightened me. It was the careful perfection. Perfection is a mask. And in my years as a detective, I had learned one thing above all. Behind masks, monsters wait. The house was Daniel's mask. On the surface it shone, but underneath it was a trap. I began noticing patterns. He controlled when Emily slept, what she ate, how much she worked. He handled her calls, her emails, sometimes even her schedule. She was a successful woman before she married him, sharp and independent. But now she looked like a shadow of herself, moving through the house as though it guided her more than she guided it. And me, I was the easiest target of all, a 68-year-old woman with a history of heart problems, already painted as fragile. He didn't need to fight me. He just needed to let the drugs do their work and wait for me to fall apart. But he underestimated something. I might have been older. I might have been tired. But my instincts hadn't left me. They whispered every time the blinds slid down unasked. Every time Daniel's smile lingered too long. Every time Emily repeated herself in that dazed voice. They whispered what I didn't want to admit. This wasn't care. It was control. And the house I thought was my refuge was nothing more than a cage designed by the man plotting to erase us both. The hardest part wasn't what Daniel was doing to me, it was what I saw happening to Emily. My daughter had always been sharp, bright eyes, quick wit, the kind of woman who could juggle 3 tasks at once while still making you laugh. But in that house, day by day, I watched her light dim. It started small, little slips anyone might make. Misplacing her car keys, forgetting what day it was, losing track of a conversation halfway through. At first she laughed it off. "Guess I'm turning into you, Mom," she'd tease, her smile a little too forced. I tried to smile back, but inside something twisted. I knew the difference between natural forgetfulness and something else, something deliberate. And every evening Daniel handed her a steaming mug of his special tea. "It helps her relax," he'd say with that practiced grin, as if he was the devoted husband caring for a fragile wife. Emily accepted it without question, drinking every last drop, and afterwards she'd sink into the couch beside him, her body slack, her eyes heavy. By the time the credits rolled on whatever show they were watching, she could barely keep her head up. That wasn't rest. That was surrender. I recognized the signs because I felt them too. The strange heaviness in my limbs, the way my thoughts seemed to slip just out of reach, like trying to catch smoke with my hands. Some nights I'd forget what I'd been doing moments before. I'd stand in my room, staring at the dresser, wondering why I had opened a drawer. At first I thought it was age. I told myself I was just tired, that recovery was supposed to be slow. But when I saw the same fog settling over Emily, my denial cracked. One morning she stood in the kitchen, staring at a carton of milk in her hands. "I don't remember buying this," she said softly. "Did you?" I shook my head. "Emily, you went shopping yesterday. Don't you remember?" Her face tightened, then smoothed into a forced smile. "Right, yesterday. Must have slipped my mind." She poured the milk into her coffee and pretended nothing was wrong. But I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes before she pushed it down. That fear nearly broke me. I wanted to shake her, to tell her she wasn't imagining it, that she wasn't weak or forgetful, that her own husband was turning her into someone she barely recognized. But when I tried just once, she shut me down. "Mom," she whispered harshly, glancing toward the doorway as if Daniel might appear at any second. "Don't start this again. You've been saying strange things ever since you got here. Daniel thinks." She stopped herself. "Daniel thinks what?" I pressed. She swallowed, her eyes darting away. "That you're not yourself anymore. That maybe your memory is worse than you realize." She reached out, touching my arm. "Mom, please don't make things harder." Her words cut deeper than a knife. Not because she meant to hurt me, but because I could hear how much she believed him. Daniel had been planting this seed from the start. Every mistake I made, every moment I lost track of time, he framed as evidence. Evidence that I was confused, paranoid, fragile, and Emily, living in the same fog, believed it. That was his brilliance, his cruelty. He didn't just isolate me, he isolated her too from the truth. He made her question her own mind, until mine became the easier one to doubt. I saw the toll it was taking on her. The once vibrant woman was now pale, drained, and subdued. Her laugh came less often. Her shoulders hunched as though carrying an invisible weight. She let Daniel finish her sentences, explain her own feelings, as if she no longer trusted herself to know them. The more I watched, the more terrified I became. He wasn't just erasing me, he was erasing her too, slowly, carefully, until she would no longer exist as the woman I had raised. Late one night, I stood outside her room. I heard their voices through the door, his low, soothing tone, her faint, uncertain replies, then silence, broken only by the sound of him humming as he brought her another cup of tea. I leaned my forehead against the wall, my chest tight with helpless rage. Every instinct screamed at me to break in, to drag her out, to make her see. But I knew it wouldn't work. If I pushed too hard, she'd cling to him even more. That's how abusers worked. They turned concern into proof of paranoia, turned love into pressure, until the victim chose the cage over the one trying to break them free. So I bit down on my desperation and pulled away. My time would come, but it wasn't now. Still, one thought burned in my mind as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. If I didn't act soon, I'd lose her. Not to death, maybe, but to a slow unraveling of self, until she became nothing more than a hollow shell beside him. And that to me was no different than death. I couldn't let that happen. Fear is paralyzing, at least at first, but fear never lasted long with me. Not in my work and not in my life. Once it settled, once the pounding in my chest slowed and my breathing steadied, something else always rose in its place. Instinct. For 32 years, I'd worked as a police detective. I had learned to watch the flicker of a liar's eyelid, to catch the hesitation in a story, to spot the single thread that unraveled the whole web. Even in retirement, that part of me never truly left. It had just been buried under comfort and routine, under the soft haze of age and medication. But the moment I overheard Daniel whispering about his plan, that part of me woke up. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, hands clasped tightly together, replaying his words again and again. The meds are working. She'll be incoherent enough for the paperwork. Once she's inside, no one will question it. It was clear, he wasn't just drugging me, he was building a case where every slip of memory, every dazed moment would be framed as proof. He was painting me as unstable so he could lock me away. And Emily, she was the next step. If I rushed, I'd lose. If I screamed, if I accused him without proof, it would only confirm his version of me, paranoid, hysterical, confused. No one would believe me, not Emily. Not the doctors, not the neighbors who saw him mowing the lawn with a friendly wave. That was his strength, but it was also his weakness. Because I knew how men like him worked: arrogance, overconfidence, the belief that no one could outsmart them. I'd seen it before in interrogation rooms where killers sat across from me, certain their lies would hold. They always slipped. They always revealed themselves when they thought they were safe. I just had to create the right moment. But before that, I needed evidence. My word wasn't enough. Not against his carefully built story. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. Photographs, recordings, proof that even the best lawyer couldn't twist. The house itself offered an advantage. Daniel loved his smart system. Every light, every lock, every camera connected to a central control. I had watched him use it a dozen times, his fingers dancing across a screen as he bragged about how this house runs itself. He saw it as his tool, his power, but I began to see it differently. If I could learn the system, I could turn it against him. That thought steadied me. For days I played the role he expected. A quiet, confused older woman. I fumbled with the coffee machine, asked the same question twice, nodded when he explained things to me in that slow, patient voice. Let him think the drugs were working. Let him believe he had broken me down. Inside, I was watching, calculating, waiting. At night, when the house was silent, I lay awake going over every detail. His routine, Emily's routine, the sound of the garage door when he left, the time his morning run ended, the way his office door clicked shut. Piece by piece, I built a map of his movements. It felt familiar, almost comforting. The same way I used to prepare before an operation, back when I had a badge: observe first, and strike later. But there was a difference this time. Back then, the suspects were strangers. Now the danger was sitting at the head of my daughter's dinner table, smiling politely as he passed me the potatoes. That made it personal. Too personal. I'll admit, there were moments I doubted myself. Times when the haze crept in, when my mind felt sluggish. And I wondered if maybe he was right. Maybe I was slipping. Maybe the paranoia was mine. Not his design. But then I'd see Emily staring blankly at a half-written grocery list, or hear her forget her own colleague's name, or watch her drift into silence as Daniel's tea cooled on the table beside her. And I knew. It wasn't me losing my mind. It was him taking it from us. That rage became my anchor. I promised myself something as I sat there in that too-perfect kitchen one morning, watching Daniel pack Emily's vitamins into a neat little case. I promised that I would not let him succeed. I would not let my daughter's life be stolen while I stood by, helpless. I wasn't helpless. I was still me. And I still knew how to hunt the truth. The detective in me was back. And Daniel had no idea that the woman he thought was broken was quietly, patiently preparing to catch him in his own trap. The morning after I made my decision, I woke with a clear goal. I needed evidence, not suspicions, not feelings. Evidence. Daniel's plan depended on invisibility. He wanted everything to look normal from the outside: a concerned husband, a stressed wife, an aging mother-in-law who was losing her grip on reality. But people who hide their crimes always make mistakes. I just had to find his. I started with observation. I watched the way he handled the tea at night. He never let Emily prepare it herself. He boiled the water, measured the leaves, poured it with a kind of careful ritual, as though it mattered more than it should. When Emily reached for the pot once, he stopped her with a laugh. "Don't worry, sweetheart, I've got it. My recipe's the only one that works." That was mistake number one. Control. He had to be the one who made it, which meant the tea wasn't harmless. The second mistake came the next morning. He left for a meeting, his car humming out of the driveway. Emily was still asleep, her body heavy under the fog he had poured into her. I slipped quietly through the house, heart pounding in my chest until I reached his office. The door wasn't locked. That surprised me. Men like him always believe no one dares to search. I took advantage of that arrogance. The office was spotless, almost unnaturally so. A wide desk, a neat row of books, a computer screen in sleep mode. Everything looked too clean, too intentional, the kind of order that hides secrets rather than organizes them. I started small. Desk drawers. Top one. Pens, envelopes, nothing. Second, neatly stacked files, all labeled with dates and numbers I didn't understand. Third, empty, except for a single key. I slipped it into my pocket. Keys always meant doors, and doors meant something worth hiding. I turned to the bookshelves. At first glance, they were filled with architectural guides and glossy magazines. But when I pressed along the spines, one shelf shifted slightly. My breath caught. I tugged gently, and the panel slid forward just enough to reveal a shallow space behind. Inside, tucked away, was a small wooden box. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were prescription bottles, not labeled for Emily, not labeled for me, labeled for names I didn't recognize, patients that didn't exist, and the drug itself, I knew it, a strong antipsychotic, one I'd seen before in cases involving forced sedation. In small doses, it didn't calm. It dulled. It confused. It erased. The room spun for a second as the truth solidified. He wasn't just making us weak. He was building a paper trail, fake prescriptions, fake names, drugs disguised as treatment. He had thought of everything, but not this moment, not me standing there, camera phone in hand. I snapped pictures of every bottle, every label, every false name. I zoomed in on the prescribing doctor, someone I had never heard of, but the detail mattered. I knew how cases were won. Dates, numbers, proof that couldn't be explained away. When I had enough, I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Every bottle, every lid, every position. I slid the panel shut, wiped my fingerprints from the wooden box, and stepped back, heart still hammering. The room looked untouched, but now it held a secret weapon. my knowledge of what was hidden there. Before I left, I checked the desk again, the key still burning in my pocket. I searched the bottom drawer, where something rattled against the wood. A false bottom. I pried it gently open and found another stash. This time documents. Papers outlining legal guardianship, medical authorizations, power of attorney forms, with Emily's name neatly printed at the top. Blank signature lines waited, as though she would one day be too unwell to resist. I photographed them all, every single page. By the time I stepped out of the office, the house seemed quieter than before, as though it knew I had broken into its secrets. I slipped the key back into the drawer, shut everything with care, and walked calmly to the kitchen, just as Emily shuffled in, her eyes half closed. "Morning, Mom," she murmured. "Morning, sweetheart," I said softly, forcing a smile. Inside, my pulse still raced, but I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Strength, because now I had proof. Proof of the drugs, proof of the lies, proof that Daniel was planning to erase us both and take everything. It wasn't enough to stop him yet, not on its own, but it was a beginning. The kind of evidence you could build a trap around. I looked at Emily, her shoulders slumped, her face pale. She poured herself coffee and stared blankly at the counter. She didn't notice the way my hands no longer trembled, or the way my eyes stayed fixed on her with quiet determination. She didn't know that her mother had just stepped back into the fight. And Daniel, he had no idea that the cage he built was already starting to crack. The bottles and papers I found were enough to confirm everything, but not enough to protect us. Daniel was clever. He could claim they belonged to old patients, explain away the prescriptions, spin the documents as drafts for future care planning. Lies were his strength. He wrapped them in charm and patience until even the sharpest persons started doubting their own judgment. I knew better. Evidence was one thing, a confession was another, and if I wanted to end this for good, I needed him to say it out loud, where no one could deny it. That's when I realized the house itself could be my weapon. Daniel loved his smart system. Every corner of that house was wired to obey him. The cameras, the locks, the speakers, even the blinds. He controlled them all from a sleek tablet mounted in his office. I had watched him demonstrate it proudly, waving his hand like a conductor leading an orchestra. "This place listens to me," he'd said once, grinning. Good, then it could listen to me too. One afternoon when Daniel left for another meeting, I slipped into the office again. This time I went straight to the wall where the control tablet sat glowing faintly in sleep mode. My reflection stared back at me in the dark glass, an older woman with lined eyes and steady hands. I pressed the screen. The house woke. Menus unfolded before me. Security, climate, lighting, media. Hidden beneath all of them was what I needed. Surveillance. Not just cameras outside, but microphones tucked into the smart hubs in every major room. High quality, always listening, always ready. My fingers moved carefully. I couldn't risk triggering something Daniel would notice, but I found what I was looking for. Automation. I could set a trigger phrase, a simple sentence that, when spoken, would activate recording, save the file under a hidden name, and upload it directly to the cloud. It was risky. If I fumbled, he'd know I'd been inside. But I'd been a detective too long to let fear stop me. I thought about what the phrase should be. It couldn't be something ordinary, something Daniel or Emily might say by accident. It had to be mine, personal, unique, unforgettable. And then I remembered my late husband. He used to sing a line from an old folk song whenever life felt heavy. "The sun's going to shine in my back door someday." He'd hum it under his breath while fixing the sink or sitting on the porch after rain. It was ours, no one else's. I typed it in. That was my key. My secret weapon. When I finished, I tested it under my breath. "The sun's going to shine in my back door someday." A tiny blue light blinked in the corner of the tablet. Recording activated. I whispered, "Stop," and it switched off. It worked. For the first time since stepping foot in that house, I felt the balance shift. Daniel thought he had built a fortress that only obeyed him. He didn't realize he'd given me the perfect trap. I left the office with my heartbeat steady and my mind sharper than it had been in months. Now all I needed was to lure him into saying too much. That meant pushing him off balance, cracking his calm mask, making him believe he had already won. I started rehearsing in my head. The right moment, the right trigger. It couldn't be an outright accusation. If I confronted him too soon, he'd deny everything, smile his way out, and tighten the leash. But if I gave him just enough, if I made him think I was broken, frightened, powerless, he might let the truth slip. I remembered interrogation rooms from years ago. The trick was never to corner someone too fast. You let them talk, you act like you believe them, and slowly they reveal themselves, piece by piece, until the mask falls away completely. That's what I needed from Daniel. Each night, as I lay in bed pretending to sleep, I planned the confrontation. I pictured the kitchen table, the quiet morning light, the smell of coffee. I pictured myself asking just the right question, saying just the right phrase, and watching him unravel. It wasn't just strategy, it was survival. If I failed, I'd be locked away by the end of the week. If I succeeded, Daniel's perfect plan would collapse around him, and Emily would finally see who he truly was. One evening, as I passed by Emily's room, I saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale, Daniel's mug of tea untouched in her hands. She looked so small, so lost. I wanted to run to her, to take the cup away and beg her to believe me. But I didn't, not yet. If I rushed, I'd lose her trust completely. Instead, I turned away, gripping the banister until my knuckles whitened. Patience. That was the only way. Daniel thought he had written the ending to this story, but I had written too many endings myself to let him finish it. He had built a cage, and I was about to turn that cage into his prison. Good morning, I chose to began like any other. That was the point. Normalcy was Daniel's mask, and I had to wear one too. I rose early, letting the house hum awake around me. The blinds whispered open, spilling pale light across the room. Down the hall, I heard the shower running in the master suite. Daniel's voice floated faintly, humming some tuneless song. Emily still slept, curled beneath the weight of his drugs. I moved quietly. My hands shook only once when I slipped the photograph onto the bathroom mirror. The picture I had printed of his prescription bottles, the damning labels clear as day. Beneath it, in thick lipstick strokes, I wrote two words, I know. It wasn't evidence meant for the police. It was bait meant for Daniel. A reminder that perfection cracks, that secrets bleed through. I left the room as steam curled beneath the door. By the time I reached the kitchen, my face was a mask of calm. I busied myself with the coffee maker, spooning grounds with slow, deliberate motions. My heart thudded, but my breathing stayed steady. The shower shut off. Silence, then the sound of feet against tile. The opening of a door. For a moment, nothing. Then a sharp cry, strangled with rage, ripped through the house. Something clattered, glass shattering against the floor. And then came the footsteps, heavy, furious, charging down the hallway. He burst into the kitchen, robe clutched around his shoulders, hair dripping, face twisted in fury I had never seen before. The mask was gone. You think this is funny? He spat, slamming his fist against the counter so hard the coffee mugs rattled. His eyes were wild, stripped of charm. What did you do? I turned slowly, feigning confusion. Daniel? What's wrong? Don't play dumb with me, he hissed. The picture, the message. What do you think you know? I let my gaze drop, my voice small and trembling. I overheard you. I know about the medicine. I know you want me gone. I know you've been hurting Emily. His laugh was sharp, cruel. You think anyone will believe you? You're already half senile. You forget what day it is, what you ate for breakfast. You're a walking diagnosis. And that note you left me? He sneered. It proves my point. You're paranoid. You're violent. You're unstable. Exactly what I've told them. Inside, I forced myself to stay calm. His arrogance was working in my favor. He was spilling pieces of his plan without me pushing. But it wasn't enough. I needed him to confess it all. I whispered almost to myself, the sun's going to shine in my back door someday. A tiny blue light blinked on the smart hub in the corner. Recording live. Daniel didn't notice. He was too far gone, pacing like a predator, voice rising. Do you even understand what's happening? He barked. Tomorrow the doctor comes. They'll take you away, and everyone will believe it's for your own good. Emily already thinks you're losing it. She'll sign the papers without a fight. He leaned closer, his breath hot, his words sharp knives. And once you're out of the picture, I'll have her exactly where I want her. Power of attorney. Total control. She won't even see it coming. I stayed still, my eyes wide, my voice soft, and then, his lips curled into a smile that chilled me to the bone. Then accidents happen. People overdose. People fall. And the grieving husband, the man who tried so hard, walks away with everything. There it was. The whole truth. Laid bare. His pride was his downfall. Too eager to gloat. Too certain I was powerless. My fear vanished. I straightened slowly, my voice no longer trembling. You're wrong, Daniel. He blinked, thrown off by the sudden strength in my tone. I may be old, I said, my words sharp and clear, but I'm not broken, and I've been listening, recording every word. I glanced at the smart hub, its blue light glowing. His eyes followed mine. In that instant his confidence shattered. The realization washed over his face like cold water. What did you do? His voice cracked, no longer steady. Computer, I said firmly. Send file to Detective Laura Mason, Houston Police Department, and to Emily Carter. The hub chimed softly. Action complete. Daniel's face drained of color. For the first time since I had known him, he looked afraid. He lunged toward me, hand outstretched, but the sound of tires on the driveway froze him. Emily's car door slammed shut, her footsteps quick on the stone path. At the same time, faint sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. He backed away, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Then he turned and bolted toward the back door. But it was too late. Daniel ran for the back door, his robe flaring behind him, bare feet slapping against the tile. For a moment, I almost thought he might escape, vanish into the woods behind the house, but the sound of sirens grew louder, closer, echoing through the neighborhood. And then, as if the house itself had turned against him, the back door lock clicked shut with a mechanical hum. The system he had worshipped, the cage he had built, had trapped him inside. He spun around, wild-eyed, and met mine across the kitchen. His face, once so polished and charming, was now stripped bare. What stared back at me wasn't a man. It was a cornered animal. The front door opened, and Emily stepped in, her expression tired but soft, until she saw us, until her phone chimed in her hand, and she glanced down at the video already playing. Daniel's voice filled the hallway, clear, undeniable. And once you're out of the picture, I'll have her exactly where I want her. Accidents happen, and the grieving husband walks away with everything. Emily froze. Her eyes flicked from the screen to Daniel. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The truth was too large, too heavy, crashing down all at once. Emily, he started, his voice suddenly desperate, the smoothness gone. But she stepped back, clutching her phone to her chest. Her face crumpled as tears welled in her eyes. What did you do to us? She whispered. The sirens stopped outside. Red and blue lights flashed across the windows, casting broken colors across the marble floor. Heavy footsteps thundered up the porch, and then officers poured in, weapons drawn, voices sharp and commanding. Daniel raised his hands, but his eyes never left me. There was hate there, pure burning hate, but beneath it a flicker of something else. Fear. He knew it was over. The officers cuffed him, reading his rights, as he snarled and cursed, his voice echoing off the pristine walls. Emily pressed herself against the counter, trembling, as one of the officers gently guided her out of the way. Another officer, tall and steady, turned to me. Mrs. Carter, are you all right? I nodded slowly. My legs shook, but I stayed upright. I'm fine, I said. My voice was calm, but inside a storm raged. Relief, anger, exhaustion, grief, they all tangled together until I could barely breathe. Daniel was dragged out, his fury spilling into the morning air. The sound of the cruiser doors slamming shut was like a final exhale. Silence settled over the house, heavy and broken. Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale, her phone still glowing in her hand. I went to her, placing my arms around her shoulders. She sagged against me, her body trembling. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't see it. I didn't believe you." I stroked her hair, tears stinging my own eyes. "You weren't meant to see. That's what he did. That's how he worked. But it's over now. Over." The word felt fragile, like glass, because the truth was it wasn't fully over. The weeks that followed were a blur. Statements, interviews, court hearings. The video sealed Daniel's fate. He confessed to more than I expected, once confronted with the evidence, about the drugs, about the fake prescriptions, about the plan to seize control of Emily's finances. He named his accomplice too, a slick man named Victor, who had written the false documents. Both of them faced long prison sentences, but prison didn't erase what had been done. Emily's recovery was slow, painful. She went through withdrawals, sleepless nights, moments of panic when she doubted her own mind. I stayed with her through it all. Every time she questioned herself, I reminded her gently, "It wasn't you, it was him. You're stronger than he ever knew." There were nights when she cried, saying she felt ashamed for trusting him, for doubting me. I told her the truth. Abusers thrive on trust. They build their cages with love, not chains. You survived, Emily. That's what matters. As for me, I sold my little apartment in Chicago and moved to be closer to her. We started to reclaim her home, piece by piece. Gone were the sterile white walls and cold furniture. In their place came warm colors, plants, family photos. The smart system was stripped down, reset, reprogrammed. It no longer felt like a cage. It became just a house again. One evening, months later, Emily and I sat on the porch together. The air smelled of jasmine. Soft music played from a small speaker. And for the first time, she looked at peace. She turned to me, her eyes clear. "Mom," she said softly, "you saved my life." I shook my head. "No, Emily, I just reminded you of who you are. You saved yourself." She smiled faintly, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Still, I'll never forget." I looked out at the yard, at the sunlight filtering through the trees. My husband's old line drifted through my mind. "The sun's going to shine in my back door someday." And it had. I wasn't the victim Daniel wanted me to be. I was the woman who saw through him, who fought back, who caught him in his own web. And I was still here. Emily was still here, and that was enough.